Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the midst of the MSME Conclave, Manufacturing and MSME Conclave, pardon me. This is an extraordinary session consisting of former presidents of Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They're really much more than just former presidents. They're all leading lights in the field of industry, at least in this part of the country. We have with me Mr. Indrajit Sen, who is the Managing Director of International Combustion India Limited, an Indian public limited company. Mr. Sen is a mechanical engineer from Premier Engineering Institute in India and has been involved in manufacturing of railway wagons, shipbuilding, ship repairing, manufacturing of cranes, boilers, and other industrial machineries. Really, indeed, he has been a guidance for us as far as the manufacturing committee is concerned, as far as the Center of Excellence is concerned. We have with us Mr. Aniruddha Lahiri, with his 4 decades experience served in leadership role in various companies such as Unilever Group, TCG Group, etc. Mr. Lahiri has 2 companies that he has founded, Trishul Engineering Solutions Private Limited and Engineering Design Services Company. He is founder chairman of both the companies and is now dedicating all his time to build these businesses. We have with us Mr. Alok Mukherjee, currently the chairman and member of various corporate boards, governing and advisory bodies of several technologies, BTech, MTech, and management, MBA institutions. He is also a mentor for committees on skill, innovation, startups, quality in various associations, and chairman of Audit Committee Director, Indian Steel Sectors Skill Council, government sponsor. Indeed, he has been at the forefront of this MSME conclave right from the year 1. He was our chief judge for the first 6 to 8 years. And as far as Mr. Mukherjee is concerned, he can be considered as one of the pioneers in the field of MSMEs, at least in Bengal, in Calcutta. And I still remember from Maheshtola right down to Shibrampur, but it was all fabrication shops and components being built for flax in those days. And that was the making of Mr. Alok Mukherjee. Then we have with us Mr. Ambarish Dasgupta, with more than 30 years of experience in management consulting leadership. Mr. Dasgupta has been a national consulting leader in PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG. He's been in innovation, business transformation, organizational strategy and governance, change management and organizational dynamics. Currently, he is founder and senior partner of Inquiry Consulting LLP. Welcome, Ambarish.
Thank you.
Today, we have our session, which is the effect of pandemic on industries and future roadmap for manufacturing and MSME sector, particularly in this part of the country. To start off, let us first discuss a little bit on the major business segments affected by the pandemic, effect on the manufacturing sector,
I hear you.
Their impact on the industry of the region, of this region. To start off, may I request Mr. Indrajit Sen.
Thank you, Kumar. Good afternoon, all of you. We are talking at the moment on a topic which...
I don't know, lost you. You can't be...
Sorry? Can you hear me?
You can't be heard.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. At the moment, of course, today we are discussing a very important topic as to what damage has been done by pandemic for the last 1 year that we have gone through, the world has gone through, everybody has gone through. So to start with, let us look at the segments. I mean,
Excuse
when
me,
we
you
talk
cannot
about.
be heard. I can hear you.
No, Mr. Lahiri, I think there is a problem at your end. We can hear him well.
Okay.
Indrajit, we can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I think Aniruddha, I don't know. Alok, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, yes, you are quite audible. Mr. Lahiri is audible too. Quite audible.
Okay. Okay, let me continue.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yes, please.
When we talk about industry and its effect on the pandemic's effect on the industry, we just do not only talk about one segment of
We can't
industry.
hear
Which is
you,
manufacturing.
Indrajit. We can't hear you.
I
We
think
can't hear you.
Aniruddha, I think
I can't hear you.
Was I audible?
is he audible?
We can't hear you.
How do you do that? How do you,
I think one
Santosh, we
can.
can't hear you. We can't hear anybody.
Somebody from the chamber may please phone him. Call him on phone.
hi, call him on phone. He has to switch off করে on করতে
I
বল. In the meantime, let me continue while Aniruddha comes in, right? It's okay?
yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Actually, when we talk about industry, we can't just don't talk about manufacturing segment, which is of course the largest segment. We don't talk about MSME, which is also the largest group of manufacturing. We start, and I would rather start by saying, let's have a look at which segment of the industry which has been affected badly and which has not been so badly affected. And if we talk about segment which is badly affected, worst affected, I would start by saying that it is the hospitality sector, it is travel and tourism, and the segment more like that, entertainment. I mean, what has happened to those industries is during this shutdown or lockdown, the time and the date and the business that they have lost is lost forever. I mean, this is not recoverable. Again, we look at the one which has suffered least. And when we look at those segments of the industry, we look at, for example, health services, it has suffered least. We look at pharmaceutical industry, which is not really so badly affected because they were always active. We also look at some of the other sectors like food processing, and some of the sectors which has really grown during this period of pandemic. Sectors which are deals with digital marketing, sectors deals with web marketing. On those sectors have done very well during this period. They have grown to a new different level. To an extent, I would also say the IT has not done too badly because that's my view, because IT could operate from their own work from home situation. And when we look at what has happened to other sectors, for example, there are sectors which are agro-based sectors like tea, like jute. These were also affected very badly because of migrant laborers. I mean, that has happened. When I come back to only the manufacturing sector, which is also a very big sector, including MSME, this has been very badly hit. It was badly hit. First, it was hit because of lockdown. So there was no manpower, they were not allowed to work, so it was hit badly on lockdown. Then the problem of all manufacturing sector is that they source from all across the country. It's just not local sourcing. And this must be understood very clearly that suppose, for example, in West Bengal, the factories are open, but we source it maybe from Gujarat, maybe from Maharashtra, where factories are closed. So the sourcing got affected very badly. And they were severely, their business got severely affected because of that. Having said this, I must also say that on the demand side, on the execution side, I would not say that the loss of business during this period was really a real-time loss, because the demand remained. And what happened was that beyond a certain period of time, they could again come back and deliver what the market wanted. I mean, it is more a deferment than an outright loss, like what has happened to travel tourism or hospitality industry. And this is, I think, what has been really one of the pictures that we see. And when we look at this, I think going forward, as this pandemic is really moving out a little bit, I think going forward, it will start becoming better and better. That's what I would say.
Suresh Dasgupta, your take on this?
Hello, Mr. Vasu. What was your question? Couldn't hear you well.
Basically, we are discussing about the major business segments affected by the pandemic.
Right.
And
Okay.
affected by the manufacturing sector and MSME.
So yeah, the major sectors of the business which we heard from Mr. Shen, of course, I mean, those are the main sectors, but the sectors are also very intertwined. So therefore, there is always any 2 or 3 sectors being badly affected. And if those sectors have been really contributing well to the economy and to the GDP of the country, then what happens is that the effect percolates down and it actually moves to the other sectors also. And therefore, there will be a certain amount of impact on all sectors, and the sectors are so intertwined. But of course, we know hospitality sector was very badly affected, real estate and construction sector was very badly affected, auto at the initial level was very badly affected, and therefore the auto component manufacturer was very badly affected. Anything related to the logistics, any sector related to the logistics was also very badly affected because there was no movement of goods. So the only one who possibly a little bit survived was related to the healthcare and pharmacy. But also there is now a newer sufferance which has come in that sector as well, because at some point in time we have seen that there was a huge proliferation of production of some materials which were related to the COVID mitigation, like sanitizer, PPEs, and all those masks. Now that demands are to some extent coming down. So there is a new proliferation or a new emergence of a different kind of sufferance in some industries who have actually invested in creation of technology, in training their manpower to produce those PPEs and all those kinds of COVID mitigation technologies. They are now to some extent going down to the path of suffering. Also, the industry situation, the bad impact or the positive impact, it also keeps on varying. Now, interestingly, since the vaccination is now going on in full spree, another positive impact on an industry which is now coming up is the production of the syringe. Because there is an acute lack of suddenly being realized that there are not many syringes available that if you want to administer the vaccines at a full scale. So therefore, there is a newer emergence of a sector. So this sector situation now at no point in time is a very permanent kind of thing, either on an adversity or on a positivity. But yes, as I agree with Mr. Shen, there are a couple of sectors which he named, those were initially the biggest sufferers.
Yeah, as it appears, the suffering appears to be very dynamic, hopping from one item to another. Mr. Laidi, are you online? Otherwise, may I move over to Mr. Mukherjee? Your comments on this.
Oh, well, if the question remains the same, that which sectors have been most affected, I think impacted, I think the answer would also remain the same as Ambarish said. The most of the things that we know from the beginning, aviation, entertainment, hospitality, all those are doing badly. Certain sectors like pharma and IT component manufacturer, they have not been doing very badly. But I would like to go to a different angle on this. That is the particularly looking at MSMEs. MSMEs today, actually, there is a twin attack on MSME. One was, of course, COVID, and another is lockdown coming out of COVID. I think the large companies has always some buffer. They can tolerate some shocks, like a wagon with a buffer. But the small companies, MSMEs, have no such buffer. And that's why it hit them very hard. They were hard on all respects, but I think the hardest hit, according to the MSMEs, with a lot of whom I have talked, is the cash cycle. The cash cycle got completely disrupted because number one, whatever they have supplied by paying their own money, They are not getting paid for that, and the government, as usual, was also not paying. So, which might not have hurt the large industries very much, or even if that did, they could withstand that very well. But uh, they for the MSME, it came very badly. That this is it was really a shock. And as Ambarish mentioned, some of the SMEs they innovated during this period, and I know the people who had nothing to do with it started manufacturing hand sanitizer, toiletries, PPE kits, reusable mask, and all those sort of things. Agreed that the market of that will go down, bound to go down as COVID gradually finishes. But even then, that was a very bad time, and some of them could not have survived if they have not started going in another direction completely. Another thing, MSME was very affected, which large industries are not affected, is a remote area. Those are who are based in remote area. They had plenty of difficulty. Number one, even disturbance in supply of electricity. I'm talking now all India, not West Bengal. Interruption in supply of electricity and the supply chain system, because their supply chain system may be somewhere where they just couldn't reach them anyway. So these two things, and of course the restriction on movement, these things hit them very badly. And many of them, as Kumar, you said rightly, many of them face the today now they have a muted demand, which was not released then, but it is coming back gradually, and the new customer expectations are coming. But there are operational challenges still, even today, which is because of health and safety restriction. Many small the business actually needed to make a changes to survive. So the broad theme was generally the same with a large business, protecting the health and safety of the employees. This is what has cost them a lot, and this is look. I mean, if you are allowed instead of 60, only 30 people, if they have to be 2 meter distance between them, the whole layout of the factory has to be changed. And forget about the cost of the sanitizer, temperature check, and all these. Even if you forget that. So these are the things which have happened, especially to the manufacturing small scale businesses and also other small scale businesses. They are actually, and another thing we must remember, that just before the lockdown, just before Corona hit us, the economy was not doing very well at all. So some of the SMEs came into this COVID, came into this lockdown while they are either at a loss or barely breaking even. And then they were struck by all that we are saying. So I
It is
think I'll stop here right now, and you can we will come back as you go on
it is
asking
absolutely
other
right
questions.
that there have been
I'm in, by the way.
Good,
there have
very
been
good. Welcome, Aniruddha.
fine.
Thank
There
you.
have been
Thank
so
you.
many
No, I was
attempts.
listening all the while, but I couldn't speak. Anyway.
There have been so many attempts at defining MSMEs. And actually, during the COVID days, during the lockdown days, MSME has been formally defined considering the plant and machinery investment and the turnover. All said and done, MSMEs are really the units which have least resilience towards external business shocks. And in order to overcome that, the government had sort of decided on some credit guarantee loans. But the main problem at that time was that the demand itself was not there. The demand for products for the MSMEs was not there at all. So things were really bad. Mr. Lahiri, your take on MSMEs, how do they get over these pandemic issues?
Yeah. Mr. Basu, first of all, I would like to take a slightly macro view, if you allow me, that is.
Oh yes, of course.
And Right. I think, for a very meaningful discussion on this subject, you need to also have the up-to-date sort of the latest data. Because it's only from the data, when you crunch the data, you will actually know what the state of the industry and particularly MSMEs are at this point in time. In other words, we are hearing this ad nauseum that the industries are affected and MSMEs are badly affected. But that's all given. That's known. The point is we need to move forward now. And yes, the subject of the discussion also states about what is the future roadmap. Now, for that, you need to know exactly what state it is in now, industry sector. Number two, whenever we talk about industry, we tend to overemphasize the supply side of the supply demand chain. Now, I think the supplies and demand cannot be completely separated. They're, they're very, very, very linked. And therefore, the supply chain that has been talked about is an issue of synchronization of the supply side with the demand side. Then only the supply chain becomes sustainable. So we talk about the supply side, but we ignore the demand side. I think that is alluded to by all of us. When we said that, look, it's not just a question of supply, but it's also the question of the offtake. And therefore, we will need to look at it from a slightly different perspective because these MSMEs, they depend hugely on the demand side and particularly so because many of them are actually linked to or dependent on exports. So we need to see what is happening on the demand side as well, both domestic and internationally. We need to see that because these components, etc., which are being made, for very many industries are actually meant for export. And those countries which they are dependent upon, their first priority is to ensure that they are able to export. But they are not talking much about what's happening on the demand side and how much are they ready to take and, they increase their offtake. So that's the another point. Next point I want to like to say, let's see, when you talk about a future roadmap, fine, lot has been talked about helping extended to the large, all know that for the large manufacturers, large industries, product manufacturing industries, the government has come out with tax cut, for example. Now they have done so, but what are the incentives being given to the MSMEs? Very little. And if you say also, many times the government has said that we will do this, we'll put money in their hands and whatnot. But the fact is, do we really know how much has gone in? I doubt that very much has actually happened in terms of implementation of these plans. Right? The next is we are talking about the changing scene. In the sense that we are not talking about vaccination is being the only and dependable and reliable method of short circuiting the pandemic. Now, when you short circuit the pandemic, you're really saying that ultimately is the purpose of ending the pandemic. And the vaccination program, the vaccination program alters the scenario very significantly. Because then everybody is saying that the roadmap is that ultimately vaccinate everybody and get rid of the pandemic. But that's okay. I mean, you cannot just wait, twiddle your thumb and wait for the time when everybody gets vaccinated. And what is the time taken? The government is very serious about vaccination as being the only solution to recoup industry and everything else, life in general. Then what is this? The rate at which this vaccination is going on, it will take 3 years for people to get vaccinated everywhere. Now, if you're depending on what is the government doing, what is their program in terms of saying how how quickly and how efficiently can they vaccinate to ensure that the pandemic doesn't age, and doesn't raise its ugly head once again and every now and then. So that's another issue. So money is one, money availability. What has the government done? It has helped the large industries. Why doesn't it help the MSMEs? And if they've intended to help the industries, what has happened so far? I doubt that very much has happened. And then, of course, as I said, ultimate solution is vaccination. Then, for heaven's sake, what are you doing in terms of getting this rate up? We say, oh, we are improving everywhere. That's not the answer. The fact of the matter is, at this rate, in 3 or 4 years, can you wait for 3 years if this is the ultimate solution? Can't happen. The other thing is, helping industries, and particularly the small and middle, industries. What do? You give them incentive. You provide, for example, simple things. You give money. I mean, as long as the pandemic exists, and that's going to be some time, then why can't you say that government will help you in buying boots where all the workers will get, can get sanitized, the tunnel through which you go and get sanitized, but they can't afford it. So why the government come to give you a subsidy, or we'll give you help, or we'll give you this thing, go and buy and put them in use in your industries? This doesn't happen, right? Give them incentives in terms of also financial incentives. Now, very little of that has been done, as I said earlier. So on the whole, I'm saying that unless first thing is that unless and until you have statistics and you crunch that data, you will not be able to, point towards any meaningful solution in terms of creating a roadmap as to how to go about it. The second is help is needed, and help is needed much more vigorously implemented than it is in time. Third is, as I say, I'm summarizing this, and I'm saying that for heaven's sake, you are helping the large industries. Why don't you? And who got deep pockets and they can bear, as Balogda said, they can tolerate this thing for they've got a capacity, they've got a certain capacity to absorb this shock. So what are you doing for the MSMEs? You're not doing anything. So I think these issues and then demand side, find out what's happening.
We'll get back to you, Mr. Nairi, in a while. Just in a minute. As far as this financial year is concerned, I think Q1 was a washout. Q2, Q3, Q4, slow progress has taken place. Q4 appears to be promising. Now, as far as working procedures are concerned, there has been a major shift in the sense now there are virtual conferences, web meetings, working from home, etc. Now, do you really think that this is going to be the normal method of working, Mr. Mukherjee?
No, 1 minute,
Yeah,
Mr. Basu, 1 minute.
Yes.
First, please say whether these are relevant to the MSMEs. We are focusing on MSMEs now.
yes, of course it's relevant. I'll tell you it is relevant. It's relevant to everyone. It's relevant to MSMEs.
It doesn't apply to the MSMEs. I'm sorry.
Aniruddha, I don't quite agree with you. It applies to the MSME most certainly, but not in the scale as it does apply to the very large companies. They have today, many of them have today to almost die if they don't have the digitalization, let's say. On the other hand, MSMEs can survive a little better if they have access to only a lower level of digitalization. Let me tell you this. First, let me tell you one thing which you started with, but we revisited, the stimulus package. I think the stimulus, I happen to be chairman of a board which is kind of comprising only federation of MSMEs. And they told me, most of them told me, the members, that it's a very bitter experience for them when they try to get to this so-called stimulus which the government is trying to give them. You see, stimulus should be a package. It should be a package of mix of fiscal support, of course, but also ease of getting that fiscal support, and that needs some fundamental reform. So they said if you have to fill up 23 forms or whatever, and then you give, then when they go to the bank, where is your collateral? Then of course this is not the thing for the MSMEs. This can be for something else. So they were generally not
All of
very
that
happy experience. They didn't have a happy experience
existing.
with
What help has
the
been to me?
this. I'll come back to the question of digitalization. It's a big question, I think, with a small answer. But ultimately, in the long run, it is quite true that we will probably go to a hybrid system when the COVID comes down. We shall have online, but we shall also have physical meetings and things like that. But it is true, that's what they told me also. It is true that certain customers are asking them that if you want order from us, you must be prepared to accept it online. We don't want to see your face. You are not welcome to our, because of COVID. I am not welcome to your place. You are not welcome to my place. So at least some level of digitalization is a must, where we can transact business. And we have done. We have seen many of the MSMEs have done that. They have already started a web. They are, I think a survey tells that about 25 to 30% of the MSMEs have done that. They are all using WhatsApp or using mail or whatever. The most basic level of digitalization many of them are. And I don't think, Anirudh, though, that this is something is not applicable to the MSMEs.
Okay.
MSMEs, it is applicable, most certainly, but but in a much lower scale and lower level. So I have seen many of them taking classes in trying to join classes where the digital marketing was shown, and I have spoken to 15 of them, and they are very excited. I said, this is what our customer wants. We must get done this somehow, borrowing money here and there, whatever is needed. Not much is needed, but whatever is needed, we'll find out the money and do this. So
Yes.
it
I
is
have to add
something
something.
that
Yeah.
we have to do in different scale, I must say. Third
You are
point,
right.
third and last point, vaccine is not the end of the world, end of everything. I do not know whether all of you have read the articles which have come out in Lancet, which says categorically that a vaccine, after vaccine, you must wear your mask, you must wash your hand, you must keep the social distancing. Because nobody, no manufacturer of vaccine knows how effective it is going to be.
Can I enter?
You can
Some
infect
of the
someone,
some of the
someone.
peripheral some of the peripheral activities can definitely go hybrid. But the
Yes,
fact is,
yes,
as far as basic
definitely.
manufacturing is concerned, it has to be on,
Everyone.
right?
Yeah.
Yes,
There can be no working from home on that, Mr. Sen, please.
Yeah. You see, actually, it was interesting. And I agree with Alok and that we have to go hybrid because some of the activity we can't do online. It has to is done better offline. Some of them, in fact, is more efficient when we go online. In fact, we have been working with a lot of our MSMEs. We were talking about the difficulty the MSMEs might face because of that, but it's not really true because they are really very flexible. And many of the meetings that we hold today with MSME suppliers are actually online. I mean, they find it also easy. We find it also easy because we can't. All of our people cannot travel. Now, one point that I want to bring here, and I think this is what I would like to share. We have done a recent analysis of what happened. We have a very large base of MSME suppliers for our company, and when we have done on an all India evaluation of how have they survived during this period, I always have maintained that MSME is very flexible and very adopt. They can adopt. Of course, they had serious financial pressure. That I agree, but they have adjusted and adopted things more or less like what Ambarish was mentioning. They have gone into different other products. and we have only lost by, because of shutdown of the factories or company, only 0.5% of our supplier base. Everyone else has survived. And when we restarted our working from Q3, Q4 more strongly, everybody kept on supplying us as we wanted. I mean, this is an interesting thing that I like to bring to the table, that it is not really that MSMEs have vanished because of this COVID. They have fought back well, and they've come back also well. That is the point I want to make here.
I fully agree with Mr. Mukherjee that vaccine is not the end of pandemic. It's just pandemic may get punctuated. That's all. To Mr. Dasgupta, just a little shift from COVID. What today you think are the main issues hindering industrial growth and fresh investment in this region of the country?
So before moving into this region of the country, which has its own complexities anyway, that goes beyond MSME, because the complexity is the economic,
I know that you are working on this.
Hello?
I know that you are working on this.
Okay, so the historical, the economic, the political complexities that our states uniquely, or this region uniquely has, that will be pervading for MSME as well as for other larger organizations as well. So not moving immediately to the state thing, the MSME as such for the future roadmap, we already have seen a lot of this fiscal incentivization, the enhancement of the liquidity, all the various schemes, the emergency credit guarantee, the ECGLS scheme, various kinds of moratorium, the working capital ceiling being taken off, a lot of relaxations on their LDBG when they're bidding for the large projects, expediting their payments. All those things have already been taken. But the one thing we need to remember, that since the MSME and our GDP is so intertwined, like 30-35% of the MSME contributing to the country's economy. So more and more we actually dole out to the MSMEs, there is also a potentiality that we're creating to create a deep scar on the economy. Because if these moratoriums, if these stimuluses that we are providing, the loans that we are providing are not actually repaid back and not being utilized properly, then there will be a deep scar on the economy, which in turn will make these MSMEs again further go down. So it's a very cyclical kind of a thing. So therefore, that balancing is extremely required. That why should I actually stop the doling out, and why should I focus more on the self-sustainability of them rather than just giving them the fiscal stimulus? So while researching on that, the area that you will see that our MSMEs primarily suffer from, in addition to the fiscal part, which possibly is adequately being taken care of, is the creation of the market. Is how do they really reach out to the newer market? Because 99% of our MSME you will see is at the micro level. They are not even the medium and the small enterprises. They are the micro level. And these micro level people are very much supplying only maybe one or two customers. So therefore, if you do a customer to the MSME mapping, 90% of them is dependent on one specific company. Like as we were saying, Mr. Mukherjee's large company would possibly be feeding from the entire road of that Bajbaj side, whatever they had, all the MSMEs maybe feeding that flat India at one point in time.
Very right. Very
So
right.
that is the true picture, that most of the 90% of these micro people will be surviving one or two particular company. And maybe the balance 10 is a little way of moving out or doing for the not just depending on 2 or 3. Now, in this case, the Indian consumption can only be enhanced up to a certain level. Because I'm not very sure that how much Indian consumption. So therefore, we have always mentioned about the exportability of the MSME product. Now, the government also has mentioned, which I think sometimes a little bit little impractical. They're saying that MSMEs have to link to the global value chain. Now, what does it mean to an MSME? Go to a foundry shop in Bakura and tell him that you have to link to a global supply chain. What does it actually mean to him? It means nothing. So therefore, all these are theoretical words only, that start exporting, link to the global supply chain and all this kind of, be innovative, go to industry 4.0. I mean, have all these kinds of things, have more training. Now, somebody which is surviving on maybe 50 lakh kind of an MSME running in Mahershala or in Birbhum or in Bankura, to him, I'm going out and saying, do industry 4.0, digitalize, go for Wi-Fi, go for WhatsApp and all these things. This means absolutely ridiculous. Now, therefore, one of the things I must say, and just then I will come to the state side, that even if we are focusing on export, there has to be a regional option being employed. Now, many people are saying that too much of dependence was on China. Too much of dependence still continues to be on China, both from an export as well as from an import, and therefore that has been now more troubled, that particular option. We are therefore having a sufferance on the export side also. Now, I think it was Mr. Raghuram Rajan or somebody actually mentioned, which I found very interesting, that if we now build up just for MSME a much more consolidated trade pact among the ASEAN countries, a much more stronger trade pact, we figuring out that what can they be importing, what can we be exporting, and India gets into that kind of a very strong strategic, implementable kind of a discussion and create a kind of a strategy based on the ASEAN MSME and can percolate it down to the every cluster level in every state, that how would they get themselves connected? What are the contacts? What are the trade logistics? What are the linkages? And can go down to a block level, to a panchayat level with that strategy and make it implementable. That this is what Indonesia is buying. This is what Malaysia is buying. You actually can reach out to Malaysia in this way. These are the buyers of such and such product of yours. That possibly will really be helping to create a newer market for them. And the problem lies in not being able to create a new market. Now, when we come to our own state, I think this will be much more applicable because our state's MSME is not so much dependent on the manufacturing side. They are dependent, but there are other dimensions, like there are agri MSME, there are logistical MSME. If I leave out the IT and ITS part, then there are agri products, food processing, logistical MSMEs. We can actually show them that what are the markets that you can reach out to within the country or outside the country, and help them hold their hands in reaching it out, in making them reach out to that. Actually with this objective in Bengal, these clusters were formed. Now, when we actually started to create this cluster, which is still now in the way of being created, one of the objective was the cluster was definitely to help them out on financing, but to help them out more on giving them implementable action items for how to enhance their market. And if we really can help them out, it will not just in our state, but in the entire country, MSME is a major problem will actually possibly get solved.
Apart from being mostly micro, the fact remains that most of the MSMEs that we have are ancillaries of some big organization, invariably. And it happens all over. In absence of most big players in our state particularly, how do you think is going to be the future of MSMEs, Mr. Laidi?
Well, I personally think that the future is very bleak. Future is very bleak unless and until there is a comprehensive plan, and the plan depends on a lot of hard work in terms of creating a comprehensive picture of what the scene is. And, I mean, I think we're not very clear. The government itself is not very clear on how to go about it. Now, a lot has been said about all the health credit, this thing, and all that kind of benefits that have been given. But I'm telling you from practical experience, I have worked in the largest industries in worldwide. Now, I am running two SMEs here, MSMEs. They're registered MSMEs, by the way. I have asked for various, whenever the opportunity has been given, I have asked for a lot of concessions, which they say they will give, but nothing has happened now. Nobody has even bothered. So, like this, once again repeat that not much has been happening to support the SMEs in a very planned way, right?
Only we are not seeing you. Aniruddha, excuse me, we are not seeing you. Will you?
Please put on your video.
Let me see.
No.
Yeah.
If he has a weak Wi-Fi, then it's better not to put on the video.
I think that's what's happening. Yes.
The
Let
bandwidth
it
is not
speak.
there.
Okay, you can. I think you can go ahead.
Forget it.
Aniruddha,
Go
carry
ahead.
on.
Go ahead. Please carry
The
on.
bandwidth is not there. So
Yeah. Just forget it. Carry on.
Okay, you carry on, Aniruddha.
yeah, so I'm saying that on the ground, the situation is different from what we hear and what we perceive based on what we hear. The scene is not that, it's highly chaotic. And I'm glad that Amrish again touched upon, or someone touched upon the fact that, it's again the demand side. And it's not enough to say that the demand is there and go and do it. I'm telling you from actual experience, I'm telling you from my own experience that the demand side is very, very weak. Now we are dependent hugely on exports, providing support to companies overseas. Now that's completely dried up, and there are no plans. Nothing has been done in terms of the government coming out and saying those who are dependent significantly on exports. Well, this is the plan for them. It won't happen. It will not happen. Nothing is seen. And therefore, I personally feel that first of all, we've got to somehow paint some scenarios with the end picture. What is the end picture? What are we planning about a period of 5 years? Or are we talking about 2 years? Are we taking 1 year? What are we talking about? Now I hear from the discussions that this vaccine is not. I agree personally, it is not. Right. Now wearing mask, this and that is very valid, regardless of vaccine, because it is not a question of vaccine. It is
For an immediate fillip,
So therefore, I think the scene is not clear at all to be able to come out and say that, well, let's project the roadmap. They're not in that position yet. It's too chaotic. The scene is very chaotic. There is too much. The water is very muddy, and at this point in time, there's no way to see which way the fishes are swimming.
Can I make a comment? Devkumar, can I make a comment?
please.
Just a very short comment. We talk a lot about government. The government giving, government not giving. But I don't you think that we as a chamber, we as federation, we as whatever should do something literally by taking them in our hand. I'll tell you one of the key things, as Indrajit said, that many of them, if not most, many of them are subcontractors, sub-suppliers to large companies. Large companies have to adopt them, sort of.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll give you an example. We did that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that. I forget. Bengal chamber was involved in that. We got experts on welding, fitting, machining, and all that from all over the world. One not from India, they're all from the world. We had to pay only the cost in India. You need to organize so that the payment fees of those people, which is huge, which don't have to be paid by us, nor is it unfair. So we brought people there. I think we brought 3 people for our company. Others might have done nothing. One was welding, one was machining, one was fitting. And they were here for 4 to 5 months, not just weeks. And I can tell you that my inspectors came and went back and told me that, sir, there is a heaven and hell difference between their product today and as it was before. I think the whole point is that it is not only adoption, not only money. Yes, money is very important, but we also show them by hand holding them by hand, how to find the market, how to have an access to new technology of what they're doing, how they can export, how they can have another large company as their customer. These things had to be done, and no government can do it. It's only we who can do it.
Absolutely.
Can I come in?
Immediate encouragement, as an immediate encouragement to the MSMEs.
I
What
did not only talk about
should be taken particularly by Bengal.
I cannot hear you because number of people are speaking together. Tell me.
As
No, I'm
immediate,
saying,
as an immediate encouragement for MSMEs, what steps you think should be taken, particularly by Bengal Chamber, particularly for products related to agriculture, tea, food products, leather, IT, which are possible at least right now in this part of the country?
In fact, let me go back one step backwards. In fact, I would say that Alok has made a very, very, very important comment in the sense that to bring up the industry in this region, particularly. I mean, there are two statements. One Ambarish has just made, and one Alok has made about development of the export market. And Alok has talked about hand holding by large companies. These are two very major factors. In fact, I would think that uh, in terms of this bringing MSME up to the standards, I mean, if we really look at our region, I must honestly say that because we operate on all India basis, I must honestly say that our region is slightly weaker in technologically, in skills, in certain manufacturing sector. I will address the other segment in a while. But to do that, there are many large companies like want to say that somebody mentioned that Flack was developing. All of us said that he had put his people to help the others do the hand holding. This is to be done, and in fact, I must also mention this to everyone: is that it is for this purpose actually the Center of Excellence was formed here. As you know, that Center of Excellence was meant for that. But one point that we can take forward from Center of Excellence is to bring in the larger companies to participate to help the MSME sector to mature more, develop skills, and so on and so forth. This is something I think we shall do, and we shall come or contact MSMEs and the other companies to do this handholding and take it forward. Answering to your question about tea and
Agriculture, tea, leather,
agriculture, tea, leather,
IT even,
I think,
food products, food products.
yes. But you see, all of, Devkumar, I think none of these really are my specialty. So it's very difficult for me to answer this question. Maybe Ambarish or Anuruddha can answer that. Ambarish, would you like to answer this question? It's not my area.
No, not that these sectors are of my specialty also, but still I will try to give an answer.
I will also try after you are finished.
Not because many of the issues that these sectors are facing for this part of the country or in our state will be similar to the other sectors as well. Now, anything that we prescribe, as we all know, we as a consultant or as an industry leader, that any prescription that we dole out to has to be very much grounded on reality. That too, because otherwise we can actually give out certain prescriptions which may possibly fall flat in implementation. So my first, if I actually work out a 3-4 step solution for these industries in Bengal, the first thing that one really needs to do is to first do a very thorough and detailed survey of the organizations engaged in this sector, in tea, agri, food products. What exactly are the burning issues out there? So we really need to find out after a detailed survey that what are the burning issues specific to them. In general, burning issues will definitely be that all know that they do not know how to get their market, they have no access to the finance and all these things. But what are the more specific sector-wise issues that they will be having? Particularly the areas which you mentioned, they would definitely be coming out with a large demand of branding, because if they are wanting to move out to a bigger market, like I know I've been talking to the DM, the then DM of Bardwan at one point in time. So I was very surprised to find out I was in Bardwan to do some study along with him. I found out that in Bardwan, the local houses produce very lovely cookies and biscuits. Very, very lovely cookies and biscuits, and all of the other Bengal Club users, you may also, I tasted those cookies, and those cookies in terms of the taste are no less than the Bengal Club cookies and biscuits which we taste, because they were actually they are taking them out from the Boeing. But these manufacturers of the biscuits have no idea that beyond that a close vicinity to which they're actually selling, how to take their excellent cookies and biscuits out, not even to forget about the, outside Bardwan, they don't even know how to reach out to the Calcutta market. So therefore, branding, logistics, these are some of the major issues, how to make them understand where they can go and how to sell. So if we, by step one, will be to first do a thorough survey about these products, figure out what their problems are, leave aside the generic problems which they have, but the specific sector-wise problem, and then at the block level, panchayat level, district level, state level, try to form team with public-private participation, because this will not be possible only be driven through the bureaucrats. This has to be through the public-private participation, companies coming forward from private sector, chambers coming forward to create such a team to help them out in solving those specific problems which will come out.
Before we close for the day, one more point that I would like to touch is the recent labor reforms and PLI scheme in industry. How these are going to affect the manufacturing and MSME sector. Recent labor reforms and the PLI scheme. Mr. Lairi, you start.
I'll take it from here. Can I take it?
I couldn't hear the question properly. It's breaking.
Okay, put the question.
The question is the effect of recent labor reforms and PLI scheme in industry on manufacturing.
Yeah. Now, when you say recent labor laws, what are we saying about? Recent means what? I mean, are we talking about the last 2 years, 1 year since COVID? What are we talking about?
No, I think only to know what Dev Kumar is trying to talk about is the three laws. Four laws which has been enacted recently. But I must, if I may say, Dev Kumar, that you see, these laws, a majority of these laws are more social security laws. Only law which is significant to any industry, not only I'm talking about MSME, is that you can engage people on contract.
And PLI also.
PLI comes, product linked incentive. I'll come later, but you see, that is one segment. So this one is not really a very interesting thing. It will generate employment, because see, sometimes some industries like construction industries need people for a short period, and then they don't need, but they are scared that taking them for a reasonably long time may get them into permanency. And so this is the most significant one. In regard to PLI, you see, this is very unclear. There are only 10 segments which has been defined to fall under this PLI, only 10 segments, including IT and few others. And they have not laid the law of what kind of, at least I have not come across that, what kind of incentive. This is productivity linked incentive schemes. It has not been stated very clearly. That's what I see.
Indrajit, is it you talking? Who's talking? Indrajit?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to answer the question which was put to me, I couldn't hear, but now since you expanded on it, the first comment I will make is that let's understand that no laws have been enacted or anything changed specifically to address this pandemic related issues. This kind of this kind of
It is a
sort of
thing to do with pandemic.
widespread impact of anything has not been seen, and therefore we are still struggling to find out what exactly is seen. Again, I say this, and I'm glad that Dr. talked about data, and say at least you admit the fact. We realize the fact that there has to be a lot more statistics generated. So unless and until you have the statistics with you, how are you going to say to the government that that the MSMEs need some amount of help in terms of, in terms of these changes that are desired the level of everything that has been enacted, and you're talking specifically about the four things, none of them are relevant to the scene that we are going through right now, the problem that we are facing right now. Now, everything that is being suggested is a bit of a laissez-faire. You're saying that you're permitted to hire and fire and that kind of thing, We're not creating, we are not, we don't want to jump from the frying pan to the fire. In other words, at this point in time, you have to also keep in mind that what has happened is very much, or deeply, let's say, linked to to the problem of job creation. So if you look at only, if you say I'll take some action, looking at it viewing a directional view, then it doesn't become very relevant. You have to take a much more holistic view, and therefore you don't do something which then affects another area which we've been struggling to solve, and that here is the question of job creation. So again, somebody talked about demand creation. We discussed this. That we have to look at. Ambrish was talking about marketing initiatives which have to be brought to the level of those small industries who are making biscuits and cakes, whatever. Now, that kind of is again linked to, it's actually addresses the question of demand generation. What is their outlet? Can you find ways and means of expanding their market? Now, this kind of help we have to give, but everything again depends on what data do we have. We don't even have, and that's where I think the Bengal Chamber should come out and help, which is to do a study which Ambarish was talking about. The chamber should say, okay, let's get together our resources, what we have, and try and see what kind of can we carry out a little
Mr. Basu,
and what kind of problem?
Yes.
What kind of solutions therefore we involve to these problems?
Yes.
Ambrish, you were saying something?
yes, I was actually trying to
Yeah.
take a stab on this question of the 4 labor codes and PLI. Now, these 4 labor codes will definitely be implemented from possibly from 1st of April. That's the announcement is, but it may shift by maybe a month or two. And I'm happy to also make a statement that not with certainty, but with a big possibility that Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries will be engaged by the government, and they're now in the middle of a discussion on the applicability of these 4 labor codes on the Bengal's labor situation. So therefore, how it will be impacting the Bengal labor. So some strategization, and they are doing some initial studies on that, and possibly they will be formally engaged. But having said so, I should say, to answer your question on the 4 laws codes, one wage, one industrial relation, one WSH, the occupational safety and health, and the social security. Now, of which there are many which will not be applicable for MSME, which is less than 300 employees. So many of them will not possibly be applicable for them. But there are certain things by which they will be benefiting as well, because the complexities of the compliances will come down to a large extent, and therefore their labor rigor cost will possibly to some extent go down. They may also adversely suffer by the wage code. They may also benefit by the wage code, because if that MSME is a subcontractor to a large firm, they may actually benefit by that. But the same MSME may suffer in terms of the wage to the employees that MSME has. So there are certain stipulations and restrictions in terms of the employee salary. So there would be a mixed impact depending on the nature of MSME that you are in. IR will not be much applicable for MSMEs as of now for the state that we have, because less than 300 employees. But the OSH part, the occupational safety health, that may actually bring in some degrees of enforcement on these MSMEs from a compliance angle, for which they may have to invest in certain things in terms of building up the safety and security, which could have a kind of, and which we are now assessing whether the government can help out on investing
Yeah,
in
they
those
can't afford
MSMEs
it.
into the OSH thing.
Somebody, they can't afford it. MSMEs can't afford it.
No, Kumar, before we end, can I make a few sentences? Just comments, last comments.
Before
Mr.
we
Basu,
call
I'll
it a
take
day,
your leave because
okay,
I have to
before we
go
call
and
it a day,
I have
let
another
us have
call.
last
Thank you very
comments
much.
for each one of you. Let's start with Mr. Mukherjee. Last comment.
Okay, all right. So the first thing that I would say is that if Bengal Chamber wants to do something, I think they may not be equipped with that. They might have to employ outside agency. I think don't spread yourself too thin. Take up 3-4 groups. Maybe tea is one. Maybe other agri products is one. Maybe small manufacturing is one. Like 3-4 groups. And whatever you can do by yourself, you should do it. Whatever you cannot do, you should give it up. But exactly to find out what bugs them most, and how to come to a solution. And then with that, you can go to the government, go to other private sector, do whatever you like. And that would be a great help. I think there are new opportunities coming. Everything, all is not lost. There are new opportunities coming from MSMEs. Because the digitalization is going to happen, may not be so much in MSME, but in large sector. And they will need components. They will need things. Like even solar energy is going to be in the next 5 years, it will probably double its capacity, and they need small items where the big companies are not into. We have to think how we can make West Bengal or Bihar or Eastern region as a kind of a hub within the country as fast, and maybe later on export of these electronic items. I can tell you also we have a few of them around Calcutta, the new additive manufacturing machine that is 3D printing. And a day is coming not very far that all auto components must be made by a 3D machine. They will not accept it manufactured by hand or by any other machine. So we should prepare the small manufacturing machine for that, how to do that. It is not that costly. Small 3D machines are not that costly. So I think there will be new parts, new assemblies, sub-assemblies, new areas, new horizons which are coming, and the darkness will go away. I think we can see sunshine and clearer days ahead, brighter days ahead, and I'm sure we shall overcome.
Mr. Lahiri, your last words.
My last word is very simple. I'll not stop laboring the point that we need data, we need statistics. Otherwise, we'll just go on, blind leading the blind. And therefore, I would say that Bengal Chamber should take up on a priority basis some studies, some surveys to actually find out what the scene is, and then react to that kind of information and paint scenario. So Bengal Chamber should primarily engage at this point in time in generating, doing surveys and generating data. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dasgupta, Ambarish.
Two things. My last word will be, or my take on this subject will be enhance the access to the market by anyhow help them in accessing the market by training, guiding, holding their hands. So access to the market. And second thing is that 99% of the MSME as of now being micro, this ratio needs to be changed in favor of the medium and small, because we cannot keep 99% of the MSME, and MSME is 30% of the GDP, and the hands of micro. So we have to make more and more small and medium enterprises evolving from these micro. And for that, we need to have lesser dependence on one single client, which again goes back to my first point also. It is interlinked that how do we really access the market. So these are the two: market and make this 99% number come down by moving the micro to the small and medium.
Finally.
Okay. In fact, I agree with everything that has been stated by my co-panelists today. But only one thing that I can mention here is that Bengal Chamber truly can add big value to this sector. They have the infrastructure, they have the capability. Of course, I agree with Alok that many of them, for many evaluation, we will need to go outside help, take outside help. We don't have the infrastructure to do it alone ourselves. But having said that, we have the infrastructure otherwise to lead in the passage. Bring in. We also have the companies who can actually come and hold hands, as has been suggested by Alok also earlier. And in what way we can increase, as Ambarish mentions about increasing the for micro industries to help them to do the marketing. This is something I think Bengal Chamber should seriously look at, make an evaluation, and see in what way they can bring this to this MSME sector of this country, of this part of the of this region, and that would make a big difference actually. That's all. Thank you very much from my
I
side.
think we have had a very interesting and meaningful discussion. Before I close, I think I will have to think of the opportunities, what has come out of the discussion. Opportunities, sunshine, hand-holding, and bright future. One small item before I close once again, it is my favorite subject, that is, right now in our life, everything appears to be connected with something electronics. It is about time we do something about electronics hardware. Electronic hardware, I think, is, and everything is today either is imported from directly from China or indirectly. It is time we put in some thoughts about that sector. Thank you.
What I said. That's what I said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.